Hey y'all, welcome back to New Slang. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney. This is episode 209 where I'm joined by singer-songwriter Thomas Csorba. Last week, Thomas was on a short run with David Ramirez and they had a stop here in Lubbock. Luckily enough, we were able to catch up for a conversation right around sound check. For starters, it was just a phenomenal show. It's always really cool and special to see a crowd fall in love with an artist or a band that they have just really never heard before. Understandably, most folks, they came to see David Ramirez, but over the course of that 40 minutes or so that Thomas was on stage, he really pulled them in with a mix of these heartfelt ballads, folky storytellers, and a few humorous tongue-in-cheek charmers. For the most part, he pulled songs from his last couple of projects, his 2020 self-titled full-length and last year's EP, From the Jordan. But, and it's something that we do talk about during this conversation, he also sprinkled in a few new songs that will make his way onto his next record. Two quick comments on what I see really emerging from his songwriting and storytelling. One, it is that humor. You're starting to see a little bit more of that humor in his songs. Something in that John Prine kind of way. Stuff that garners a chuckle, but not at the cost of him saying something substantial. I think sometimes we focus too much on the serious stuff in music, rightfully so. But you know, it's nice to have some humor in there. It's okay to have some funny, silly songs. And two, he's starting to get a great handle on talking about time, the passage of time. I've said for a minute now that that's what really makes Lori McKenna truly special. She's talented, obviously, in numerous ways, but what I think she does better than anyone else is capture that passage of time in a line or a verse virtually better than everyone else. And some of Thomas's new songs really do the same. He captures that lifetime in a line. You really feel the weight and the magnitude instantly, but it also has a little bit of that residual power that kind of lingers. Easiest example of that passage of time that I'm talking about would be something like People Get Old by Lori McKenna, or If We Were Vampires by Jason Isbell. Again, we get to some of that and much, much more during this conversation, but first, a word from our presenting partners over at Desert Door Texas Sotol. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Sotol. If you've been listening to New Slang, I reckon you're more than familiar with Desert Door by now. In case you need a refresher or just aren't exactly sure what Desert Door or what a Sotol is, well, let me fill you in. Desert Door is one of my all-time favorite premium, high-quality spirits. Harvested and distilled right here in the great state of Texas, Desert Door is genuine and authentically West Texan. Sotol comes from the desert plant it shares its name with. As a reference point, it is an agave, so there is some semblance to a tequila or mezcal, and it does owe a lot of its heritage to the resilient natives of the deserts of northern Mexico and West Texas. In my estimation though, Desert Door Texas Sotol is more refined, smooth, and fragrant than its agave cousins. It intrigues the palate and offers these robust hints of vanilla and citrus. There's a rich earthiness that often sends me back to my own Trans-Pecos and far West Texas roots. There's plenty to love about Desert Door. For me, it starts with all those inherently West Texan roots. But a close second is just how versatile Desert Door can be. You can be down home in a denim jacket and a pair of work boots, just something short and sweet like a ranch water, or throw it in some Coca-Cola. Pro tip though, get yourself one of those Mexican Cokes when doing so. Or if it's more of a blazer affair, maybe suit and tie, Desert Door, it hits the spot then too. You can be a little bit more highbrow and concoct a variety of cocktails that call for muddling fresh fruit and sprigs of thyme and sticks of cinnamon. Regardless of the occasion or your preferred style, just follow your bliss when drinking Desert Door. Right now you can find Desert Door all over Texas, Colorado, and Tennessee, with budding numbers in New Mexico, Arizona, California, and expanding across to a liquor store near you. For more on where, check out desertdoor.com. There you can learn more about their process, history, and what cocktails may suit your style. Again, that's desertdoor.com. All right, let's get into it. Here is Thomas Csorba. I guess like where I want to start off with is, you grew up in Houston, which is kind of like a different world than wherever I've been, like growing up.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere. Houston, my experiences growing up were always just kind of thinking of it as like the biggest place in the world, Anytime we went through, it was like, oh, how are we still in Houston?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, when people ask me whether or not I liked Houston growing up, it's hard to compare it to anything because it's just what you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that I grew up was very like, I was an outlier in my high school for sure. And the beauty of Houston is that being an outlier wasn't met with nothing to do, because I was kind of square at school or into music or whatever. I was able to travel to other parts of Houston and go see a show at the Mucky Duck, or back in the day it may still be around, a club called Fitzgerald's. I saw a bunch of shows at. So there was a lot of culture and life outside of my high school bubble, which a lot of small town kids don't get to have, and a lot of suburban kids don't get to have, So being close to, Houston, kind of Houston proper, was super beneficial, because I got to see a bunch of shows and, spend time like embracing the culture of Houston, super diverse culture of Houston.
Yeah, well, that's why I bring it up. Is like, if I was wondering if your experiences growing up were that suburban life, or the, where you're able to, just take advantage of there being a diversity.
Yeah.
Being that, as you kind of just mentioned, even if you're an outlier, you kind of are able to find other outliers, other groups of people who are, not thinking about the Friday night football game,
right? Yeah, and I rarely, I think the first party I went to in high school was senior prom, and that's because I was dating a cheerleader who, was popular, which was even funny that she dated me, but that's just a blast from the past. So yeah, I spent most of my Friday nights like in my room writing, or going to shows, or looking through records, or I started recording music when I was 16 years old, driving to Austin to do it, with a guy named Brian Douglas Phillips, and spending time with him in Austin and getting to know his guys and the session players that he was working with, that opened my eyes as well. So the people I was spending the most time with when I was in high school were in their 30s and professional musicians. So it was kind of a weird high school experience, but I wouldn't have traded it for the world,
Yeah. Well, so, like for comparison's sake, growing up in Fort Stockton, middle of nowhere, I still think like my idea of like where the music was Austin. Yeah. Was that still very much the same thing for you, or did you?
I didn't think about it. I don't think I understood or really thought about the idea of like music industry. Mm-hmm. I had a youth pastor when I was in high school that introduced me to Brian, because him and his buddies made a record with Brian in Austin. So it was just like, oh, here's this guy that would be interested in making an album. He so happens to live in Austin. Yeah. So I started driving out there and, missing a little bit of class to go spend a few days in Austin to record. So, but I don't think it dawned on me that like, oh yeah, Austin's the place to make music necessarily, or Nashville's this like place you go to quote unquote make it. I think going to Austin to make those recordings was just a means to make those recordings, and it was as simple as that.
Yeah. What was I always find like this to be a really interesting time in someone's life, was there like that artist or that person or that time when you kind of realized or discovered, quote unquote, discovered music outside your parents' music that you felt was your own, that like, okay, this is something totally different than what they're doing?
It's a great
it's my thing.
Yeah, it's a great question. My parents were like semi-musical. My dad, they're not musicians. I grew up around church music and that world. My dad liked Buddy Holly and Tom Petty and stuff like that. He's a California kid. My mom was from Texas, so she sang Willie Nelson songs to me to go to sleep and stuff like that. Where I really felt like I claimed ownership of like a style of music and like, oh yeah, I'm really into this thing, was through my brother, my older brother. He's probably 6 or 7 years older than me. Smarter than anybody he's met, you know. But he was my gateway into guys like Townes Van Zandt saying this is good stuff, making me digest it, you know. And getting me hooked on it, me really liking it, and him saying, okay, if you like Townes, you have to like Lightnin' Hopkins, because Townes is obsessed with Lightnin' Hopkins. And if you like Lightnin' Hopkins, you have to be obsessed with all these people, you know, all these Texas bluesmen that have kind of built the bedrock of what we know as Texas or American music. So he taught me that lineage, you know, 15, 16, 17 years old. And I'm forever indebted to him, because I think it was a really good lesson to learn, to know where the music I love comes from, you know. So yeah, I think that's when I started to really embrace, like, okay, I can see that I like this stuff, and I'm starting to understand why, you know. Yeah. And that's pretty pivotal moment in anybody's music listening, you know, journey.
Yeah, usually, like, you know, those first records that you rebel against your parents listening, you kind of go back now and you're like, oh, it's either not that great, or you're kind of embarrassed by it, or there's like this weird mix of nostalgia. Yeah. But if it's something like the Townes, or you know, the I know you've mentioned like guys like Willis Allen Ramsey, or like Guy Clark, or something like that it's timeless. Yeah. It doesn't matter when you really kind of get into it, you can appreciate the greatness of it. That's really interesting, because I feel like, you know, like the first time I listened to Townes was I had read it in a magazine about, you know, oh, you want the saddest thing ever, you know, like that. And of course, like he does have plenty of different kinds of songs, but you know, that's what I was gravitating towards. It was like, you know, oh, okay, well, I love Bright Eyes and like Elliott Smith. Well, this is something sad too. Right. You know, you try and go and find that. And
so there's definitely that. And that's like the, you know, the interview sexy side of the stuff that I liked, you know, the Willis Allen Ramsey, Townes, Guy Clark stuff. But I was also, you know, my brother introduced me to Sufjan Stevens when I was in like middle school, and Death Cab and Bright Eyes and that kind of stuff that he was really into, that I kind of piggybacked off of. And it's fun now listening back to that stuff. It was cool and still is cool for a certain reason, you know. Yeah. Not just nostalgic, you know. I think that stuff's great.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of music that if you're gonna get into it, it has to come at a certain time, or it's kind of the same thing with books, like with certain writers. Like J.D. Salinger, Catcher in the Rye, I think is the best example of like that makes a lot of different or it makes a lot of different points rather when you're 30 than it did at 15. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff I liked at 15 or 16 that I thought was the greatest thing in the world. Yeah, that, you know, if I read it now, I'm kind of going, man. You know, like the main character is an asshole versus, you know, like the anti-hero that we all wanted to believe in or something.
It's funny. I think the best art does that. You know, it's the kind of stuff that you can come back to 15, 20 years later, and it you grow around it, you know, and it's kind of this I guess this like fixed piece of art that you get to start seeing from different perspectives, you know, and I think the best art is able to be looked at from different perspectives, and different conclusions can be drawn from it. So, you know, that's obviously like myself as a 25-year-old is listening to Townes way differently than I was as a 16-year-old. And I think that's really valuable to understand and to notice. You know, I think that's the mark of good, honest work.
Well, how do you, I mean, this is maybe the unanswerable, but like, how do you apply that to your own writing to understand to maybe have that foresight?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I think like, because you can make a claim that like, yeah, if you're honest about it or if you whatever, but I still feel like there are some Townes Van Zandt songs that he would say, yeah, this one just showed up, and it just exists, and I was open and I wrote it down and there it is, and now it's waiting around to die or something. One of these songs that's like on the Mount Rushmore,
Right.
So I don't know, but there definitely has to be an openness, to write things that are outside of you. And I think that's something I struggled with in those years in high school, was like, I'm a middle to upper class kid in Houston. I have everything I need and most of what I want,
Right.
I don't have anything to say. I haven't lived any life. I haven't, I've lived in the same house since I was a kid, whatever, those kind of things. So it's like, what do I have to say? What do I have to contribute? But you have to like check yourself on those kind of things, because the best kind of art is aside from just the things that we experience, you think about imagination and living through other people's experiences, and reading and learning and paying attention to the world around you. So I'm still learning that there's beauty in everything, and everything might be worth writing about. Everything's at least worth paying attention to.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that spirit and that ethos kind of helps drive the kind of art that survives, because
Right.
it kind of leads to these universal truths, maybe that survive past us,
Yeah. What I think about is most of the great stuff that I think that most people love. One of the purest, I guess, aspects of some of our favorite writers is that they're always empathetic to whatever they're writing about.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're, just writing about just the woe is me of whatever character it is,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't dismiss the idea of like this person being a person with these motives that may be drastically different from what they grew up with, or their own morals or their own character.
Yeah, I think that's what I love the most about Randy Newman stuff, because or like the John Prine Angel from Montgomery example, hopping into somebody, especially in Randy Newman, like Good Old Boys, which is a tragic listen.
Yeah.
Absolutely tragic listen. But somehow brings the listener a different sense of compassion towards that kind of human, I think that kind of empathy is, the has to be the guiding light in writing songs that contain so much humanity,
Yeah.
which all of my favorites are, these songs that really embody humanity.
Yeah. I just got some new Randy Newman on vinyl the other day. A guy was selling, I guess, like, what did he have? Trouble in Paradise.
Cool.
Good Old Boys.
Yeah.
Which is that on? Is that the title, or is that something else?
Good Old Boys has Marie and Birmingham and
there was another
Rednecks.
one, but
Yeah.
he's such a
Little Criminals is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all these like, I don't know what record it's on originally, but there's a song called Political Science.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally like evil villain kind of perspective. But he's like, yeah, it's just great. It's so tongue in cheek, and you just smile listening to it because it's so ridiculous.
This episode is brought to you by our partners over at the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has long been the epicenter of the Lubbock songwriter scene and has been a prestigious home away from home for some of Texas, Americana, country, and rock and roll's finest over the decades. Talk with a songwriter who's come out of Lubbock West Texas, or the Panhandle the last 20 years, and 99.9% of them are going to tell you just how integral and necessary the blue light has been in their come up as a songwriter and a performer. With live original music just about every night of the week, head on over to bluelightlubbock.com to check out their schedule. I know over these next few months, you'll be seeing folks like Roger Klein and the Peacemakers, Grady Spencer and the Work, Josh Weathers, Troy Cartwright, David Bex, Tahano Weekend, Tristan Merez, and Braxton Keith grace the blue light stage. Again, that's bluelightlubbock.com. While there, check out their merch page. They have a wide range of hats, beanies, sweaters, hoodies, jackets, and koozies. You can get all your merch needs while you're seeing your favorite band take the stage by just asking your bartender, and they'll get you set up as well. And of course, this should go without saying, but make sure you tip your bartenders and buy some merch from the band while you're at it. That's 1806 Buddy Holly Avenue, Lubbock, Texas, bluelightlubbock.com. Pretty good chance I'll see you there. Okay, let's get back to the show.
No, that stuff is really great.
Yeah.
That stuff has a it brings a level of humor to some of the really mundane and maybe sad or maybe unnoticeable things of the American life, you know.
Right.
That's why I love it so much. He seems to really have a great perspective, at least really open eyes in his writing about things that are like, oh yeah, I never would have thought to say like kangaroos in a song. You know? Yeah.
Well, him and we mentioned Prine a bunch.
Yeah.
What I've loved so much is how those guys have like the longevity of their career and like being able to be sharp songwriters for that long and having something to say for that long.
Yeah.
Is really kind of amazing.
Yeah, I think part of that is that mindset, it's that openness. It's like the reason why John Prine, well, there are a million reasons why John Prine could and would have an entire audience in the palm of his hand till the moment that he passed, you know, was because there was so much empathy in those songs. I don't know. It's so hard to explain, but you see it, and it's like the narrative. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's just like the perfect mix of speaker versus storyteller. You know, like who's the character and who's saying it. Because Prine as an entity, you know, this old man standing up there with all these stories is just as good and just as interesting as the stories themselves. Yeah. You know, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is when those two things meet in a really beautiful way when he's on stage.
Yeah. Well, it's like the character, like, I guess like what you're kind of talking about is like him being John Prine, but then like the idea of John Prine, the songwriter, and then the storyteller, and then like you can say the same thing about obviously a bunch of really great artists that maybe like they're like the idea. It's maybe, and this is probably different for everybody. It's the idea of of that person in your head, because like maybe my version of John Prine is different than your version on stage. I also I find like it amazing the drive that these guys have had in their older years, because same thing with like Leonard Cohen. Yeah. It felt like he would go a decade without putting a record out, and then he almost knew like I don't only have like this much time, and he got like 3 records out. Yeah. In his very end of his life there.
Yeah, that stuff's crazy to me. You know, like when Prine put out the Tree of Forgiveness, and the last song on that record is When I Get to Heaven. You know, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna shake God's hand. I heard that and I was like, this is sadly could be such a beautiful way to just leave, you know, to bookend your catalog, I guess. And he did I Remember Everything, which is really beautiful, and you know, they were able to release that. But I don't know what kind of future I have in making music. I don't know if I'm going to be the guy that's, 60, 70, 80 years old up there still telling stories and smirking, like a Prine would. But I hope to be able to look back and have a catalog of work, to leave behind. That seems really important and exciting to me, both for myself, but also for my kids and my grandchildren, hopefully, like, oh yeah, it's a cool thing my grandpa did. I have a buddy who, I lived in Waco for a while. My buddy, his name is John McKay. He's a great, John Griffin McKay, I think his music's released under. He's a great songwriter. He lives out in Memphis now, but he has these old records of, I think, his grandpa as like a church gospel singer. And it's the coolest thing because it's, he has his family's piano, and it's just like this certain vibe, 70s gospel music. And it's a cool family heirloom, I would love to have a collection of those things to leave my family.
Yeah, that's something that I think Ryan Colwell, right?
Yeah, I know Ryan.
We've talked about this idea of him, like maybe like the most interesting part of him being a songwriter is that like he's created this like family mythos of like these songs are like written with like intention of with my daughters, but also like with the intentions of like hopefully these songs become like our fairy tales in some sense or some respect of like
I hadn't heard that. That's cool.
Where like great grandkids down the line are singing songs because like that's like their thing.
Yeah, in the same way, I like that. I haven't thought about that, and I haven't heard Ryan talk about that. But they're kind of like, oh yeah, my grandpa always had this story. And instead of saying that, it's like, oh yeah, there's this song my family always sang. That's a pretty cool heirloom. I like that.
Well, I think that's such a really fascinating, interesting thing because it is like the old family story of like, okay, we've heard grandma say like every time this, I don't know, whatever, every time like this dish is brought out,
right?
She has this story about whatever,
right?
But in this form, it's like 50 songs.
Yeah, that's so cool. That is so cool. I hope, there's also a good chance that I make a bunch of records and my kids don't care at all, which is fine too. Maybe a great nephew or somebody one day would be like, wait, no, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
feels like me, feels like an outlier in high school and, find some sort of, meaning in somebody from his bloodline, having made something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's something very, sometimes I probably worry too much about that kind of thing where maybe it's not, for me, it's not songs or stories like that, but, like my book collection, or like my record collection. What if like my kids just find that as like a burden?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
I'm just going to like throw it on the side of the road kind of thing.
Yeah. I know plenty of people that's like, in my wife's family, it's like when her grandmother passed away, it was this, just the estate plan, like all the stuff.
Yeah.
The logistics of somebody passing is so hard, that it's like, what can I leave that's worth leaving and is not going to be a burden on my family?
Yeah.
That's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Well, I've jokingly said, like my inheritance was put in like the form of Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
Like that's
yeah. I wish I still had
there's
some
stuff
of
like
those.
that, that like
yeah.
You kind of think, oh God,
yeah.
Why did you why was my family deciding like I guess that was every family probably the Beanie Babies thing, but
right. Yeah.
That strange thing that we collect.
Those things are valuable now, at least a few of them.
Yeah, that's I saw some like it was either like it was on like there was like a little documentary about how, and I say documentary, it was more just like a TV program.
Yeah.
About how Beanie Babies just came around at the right time as like the internet, because like that's what really
that's cool.
blew it up.
Yeah.
It was like this idea of them being more scarce than anything else, and it was the list, and like
right.
And they showed like the Beanie Babies website, and it's like, oh my god, like that looks like a junior high MySpace page, like that kind of thing.
Are you familiar with Robert Ellis, the
Yeah.
Texas guy? Have you seen his website recently?
I have not.
No.
No.
You got to go look it up. It's so great. It's like purposefully looks really buggy, and it's super sales pitchy, and kind of like what a Beanie Babies website might have looked like in the 90s.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's great.
This episode is in part brought to you by Charlie Stout Photography. I want y'all all to head over to charliestout.com right now to get a glimpse of his work. While you're at it, go give him a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Charlie Stout. Right now, he has more than 50 photographs for sale on charliestout.com with a diverse selection of landscapes and sky shots of West Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Open roads and windmills, sunsets and stardust, cotton rows and cacti. He captures a lot of what I love about West Texas and the great American Southwest. The depth, the way, and raw intensity is all there in his photography. He captures that struggle between man and the land. It's Mother Nature reclaiming objects like rusting tractors and abandoned homesteads, or it's man wrangling the wild and trying to put his impression on the land with rows of cotton or colossal windmills or iron orchards pumping oil from the deep, dark below. And sometimes it's just the raw beauty of a mountain breaking up limitless sky or a setting sun leaving the day behind. At any rate, Charlie's photographs move you. Maybe there's a little bit of that I ain't crying, that's just West Texas in my eye in all of Charlie's photos. Again, go visit charliestout.com and order yourself a photograph or two. Also, a pro tip, keep an eye out on his Twitter. He's consistently posting one-offs and errors and randoms on there that are available in the flash sale variety. Again, that's at Charlie Stout. Head on over to charliestout.com. Grab a signed print, buy a record. It's good for your soul. All right, let's get back to the episode. I wanted to go back onto, you mentioned something about art maybe being static or like it being a certain kind of thing, and we are the ones who are growing around it, and that's how you get perspective.
Yeah.
In saying that, like for you, like when there's a song that, I guess, like how does a song grow for you over time or change?
My own songs, or other people's
yeah,
songs?
Your own songs. And
well,
like, do you find like you've start performing them differently, or whatever the case is?
Yeah, it's so interesting because there are different lives within my songs, right? There's a demo version, like the instinct kind of thing that comes out, right? Yeah. And that's its own thing, and that's going to stay in my Dropbox folder for as long as my Dropbox will hold it, because I want to go back and listen to that in 10 years.
Yeah.
So there's that version of it. There's a recorded and produced version of it, which is a bit more final, and that one's on on wax. It's on vinyl, and it's on a CD, and it's on DSPs. So that one feels like more of a stake in the ground.
Right.
But the beautiful thing about being here in Lubbock and playing a show is that all these songs can be played in an infinite number of ways, and that the way that I'm going to play every song I play tonight will never be identical to the way I play it again. And the mystery of that is so beautiful to me. And it's the reason why I love doing it, because you can walk off stage and be like, whoa, I didn't know I could do that with that song. Or I didn't know that song could do that to me, or spill out in that way. It's interesting. I'm putting songs together for a new record right now. And so I haven't, I've probably got 20, 25 songs that, which is a lot for me. I've never had this much going into making a record. But all these songs that I'm choosing from and trying to find the through line through, and where are gaps in the story, and trying to make a narrative out of this record. And I've spent so much time with these songs on my couch in my living room. Luckily, now that I'm able to play some more shows and get out and about, I've started to watch these songs blossom on stage. What words end up sounding important, to me in singing that song. Which words do I say and I hear somebody kind of like chuckle, from the audience because they thought it was a good line or something. That stuff's really, really cool and really unique, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects my actually recording these songs. I think that this record, more than any other, is going to feel more performance-oriented, because I've spent so much time one-on-one with the songs, whereas in the past it's kind of been like, yeah, I wrote this song, I've played it a few times, let's see if we can make a studio version of it.
Right.
If that makes sense. So
yeah, no, it very much does.
They're definitely taking shape in their own shape in a really cool and different way. So I know I kind of rambled there, but yeah, they kind of, they're different lives of these songs, and the recorded versions are really cool to go back and listen to. But the beauty of them is that, like, a song I wrote when I was 15, Harvest, which I sing almost every night. I sing it so much differently now on stage than I did when I was that age. And there's something really beautiful to that, because those lines mean something different to me now.
Yeah. See, that's why I've never been mad at like Bob Dylan for changing the way something sounds 40 years down the line.
It's like, yeah, do your thing. Have fun.
It's different.
Yeah.
You're kind of a different person, or you do find I like the atmosphere, the mood that this song is if I play it on piano or whatever the case. You said something really, really interesting there, though, about maybe like these songs are breathing a little bit more, maybe like you're letting them have them a little bit more space on stage to work themselves out, versus maybe perhaps in the past, like that's either been in the studio, or I've noticed this with a lot of songwriters, they're always just kind of in the back of the head. Yeah. And you're kind of maybe working them in that way. Yeah. Where maybe this one is a little bit more out in the open.
Yeah. I think like in the past it's been like, okay, how do I figure out how this song is supposed to sound and work, and what's the, not formula, but what's kind of the form that this song is going to eventually take. And that kind of pre-assumes a quote-unquote final version of the song. And what I've been learning over the past few years is, over the past decade of writing songs, is that there is no final version of the song. There's a recorded version, there's a live version, there's a demo version. And so I think this time more than ever, I'm letting these songs lead, and I don't have, with the solo acoustic stuff especially, like I don't have to play in time. If I really want to enunciate and like point out a word to my audience, make a joke in the song, I can slow down a little bit. I can sing quieter, I can sing louder, I can speed up a little bit and get through the lines that I am ashamed of, and I haven't taken the time to go back and fix. Like things like that. Those moments, especially listening back to some of these demos, because I'm constantly making demos of these songs and just like, okay, let's try to make this feel like I'm just playing the song, and trying to notice like what are those words that stick out. And then the fun part of that is, are those words repeated in other songs, and is that a good thing? Is that a through line? Is that a motif or a theme, or is that just my lack of vocabulary? And that stuff is fun and exciting, No, but that's where the real work is, I think.
That's the part where like I'm thinking as a journalist or a writer, that's the one thing I'm always like in the back of my mind thinking, oh, have I used this word 1,000 times? And is this just something that I end up using all the time because it's just maybe like more of my style of writing? Yeah. Or is it because like...
Or is it the right word?
Yeah. Sometimes it is the right word, right?
It sucks when you find the place for it to be the right word and you half-assed it in another thing, and now you have to go change the other thing.
Yeah.
I've found myself in that position before.
Yeah, I know exactly that feeling, because there'll be something where it's like, this sounds okay with this word in it, this
Mm-hmm.
description of whatever, but this is like where it should be.
Yeah.
And then you're like, do I go back and just like nix that line? Do I go back and,
Yeah.
you know, and of course, like none of my shit has to rhyme. So,
Right.
you know, like, you know, you can
It
just,
can.
you
That'd
can
be
take
weird.
out a whole line and it'd be fine. You know?
Yeah.
But,
No,
Yeah.
it's interesting because there is you're right, there is a form to songwriting, and there's like a pace to it, and there are gaps to fill, and there are parts of songs that you write the whole song, you're like, okay, but I need to go back and fix that. You know, there's a placeholder there, or there's a gap there, and that stuff's hard. But I really think that sets apart the amateur from the professional songwriter. It's the people that are willing to do the editing and the work, you know, beyond just initial instinct.
right. Well, that's the part that I find the most interesting. I think we all love the idea of, man, the song came to me in a dream.
Yeah.
I wrote it down in 15 minutes. You know, the
Yeah.
devil had my hand right. You know, like
Yeah.
whatever, like, you know, any kind of narrative like that.
Yeah.
The magic, if you will.
Yeah.
But where it's become, where I find like the older I get, the more I'm fascinated with the process, that
Yeah.
editing process, because that to me, it may be less glamorous. We may be stripping away the romanticism of it, but like that's where all like the craft of it is like that makes you, you know, no different than the great architect, or like the, you know, or something
Yeah.
even as simple as like the guy who is a great carpenter.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, it definitely becomes more craft oriented, and no, I mean, if I did have the kind of song that came to me in a dream, you know, bring it on. That'd be great, but
Yeah.
it hadn't happened for me that way. I've had a couple, you know, some that are easier than others, and you can attribute that to the muse, you know, just being there, or you can attribute that to the fact that I woke up and didn't scroll on Instagram and walked my dog first thing in the morning, you know, like, or I didn't have coffee, and so for some reason my brain chemically feels more susceptible to be, you know,
Right.
you know, firing at a quicker pace. So there are too many factors at play. But I do know that I've the songs that I've written have happened when I've sat down and written the song, you know.
Yeah.
So as often as I can do that, I'm going to do it, you know. I think that's the quote unquote magic, you know.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I'd like to be able to say that I sit down and do that every day. But I don't. Some days I'm counting T-shirts, and some days I'm, you know, sitting in the van like today and just reading and whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's the, you know, it's always, I guess, like for me, whenever I have a hard time starting stuff.
Yeah.
So, but once I get going, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it is sometimes you can put off doing something, and it may just be as easy as, you know, I want to write today, but maybe, you know, you're putting it off because maybe you didn't have an idea, or maybe you don't have anything to write about. I guess where I'm wanting to go with this though is like, you know, obviously the past couple of years we've been in the middle of this pandemic,
Yeah.
which has made perhaps like there being more time for routine.
Yeah.
Have you been able to, like, I mean, you just talked about having 22 songs, more songs ready for the next record than perhaps the other projects. But like, I guess like where I'm going with this is, did you feel like you were able to utilize time better, or experiment better, or try things differently?
Totally. At the height of like all this stuff, I kind of realized like, okay, I'm hanging out with basically my wife and my wife only, just because we're at home most of the time, and even if we get out, we're not hanging out with people. We're going to the grocery store or whatever. So I started doing a lot of co-writing over Zoom, which was weird and hard at first, but ended up being really good. The good thing about it is, one, it taught me that co-writing's fun, especially with my buddies. Two, I think the songs are a lot better. But also, those songs wouldn't have existed unless I'd sent that text and said, hey, how does Wednesday at 10 a.m. sound?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a level of accountability there, you know, having that appointment in the calendar and knowing, okay, like Brian, for example, he's got kids and a wife, and he's setting aside time to do this. Let's make sure that I come to the table prepared and be a good steward and appreciative of his time by, you know, spending the time really writing. And, you know, a lot of these songs have come through that, you know, method of writing, which is really cool. For so many ways, it's communal, you know, like I got to make things with buddies, and we get to, you know, look at it on this side of writing and say, wow, that's cool, and this is why it's cool. It doesn't feel self-indulgent, you know, but also just because of their sheer existence, you know, they wouldn't have existed without that time, you know, spent writing. So that's been a big lesson, and I think if I'm able to, you know, set that time on the calendar for myself and say, great, I'm going to write at 10, shut the door, and I'll be in here from 10 to whenever, you know, put it on your calendar.
Right.
Like that's a very tangible way to make it happen, rather than waking up and be like, what am I going to do today? That kind of wandering basically generally ends with you sitting on the couch watching some, you know, another crime show that you've basically seen a million times.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things where I felt like, you know, the first few weeks of the pandemic, you know, all of us were wasting time like no other.
Yeah.
Because we were kind of in this weird purgatory of, you know, in 3 weeks we'll be fine. In 3 weeks, and you're just kind of led on by that. So we were all just like wasting time in that way. And it wasn't until like you kind of figured out like, hey, I have to have a little bit of a routine. I want to break in just one more time to mention The Lubbock Way, a collection of wallflower vignettes. That's a book I wrote and released this past fall. As you'd probably guessed by the title, it's a collection of stories and thoughts about the Lubbock music scene circa 2015 to around 2017. I'd like to characterize it as an insightful peek into 35 nights, weekends, and episodes about various songwriters and bands like Red Shahan, Flatland Cavalry, Randall King, William Clark Green, Brandon Adams, and many, 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 many others. It's currently on sale in the New Slang merch store. That's newslangpodcast.bigcartel.com. While there, you can also find t-shirts, koozies, coffee mugs, stickers, and a bunch of other stuff. This first edition has been exclusively limited to only 806 copies. Obviously, a nod to the Panhandle area code and all the 806ers out there. Links to the merch store, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, they'll also be in the show notes. Again, go buy a copy of The Lubbock Way, a collection of wallflower vignettes by me, Thomas Mooney. All right, let's get back to the episode. One of the things I guess I've talked with other artists about is them maybe finding other artistic endeavors
Totally
in the pandemic that have made their songwriting easier. Made it because I feel like at the same time you're just kind of given this. We were all given this chunk of time to say, hey, you know, right? Where maybe that's like not the most important thing.
Yeah.
But did you end up finding other ways of getting?
I mean, running for sure. Just being outside and using my body. I mean, it's funny how simple it is. What we need as humans, you know, food, water, exercise, hopefully some creative outlet. You know, whether that's your job or not. My wife and I both have experienced that and got to embrace that. You know, and it's like. It's kind of like no wonder we feel a little like closer to each other, or at least the ones we love. After all this, it's like it's good to slow down. You know, we live in a very fast-paced, productivity-minded environment, and I get sucked into it too. Like I listen to podcasts all the time about how to be more productive and. That kind of stuff is fun to listen to because I do want to squeeze out as much as I can out of this life, you know. But at the same time, there's a point of diminishing returns,
right.
You know, and finding the balance between what I do for work and spending time with my wife is the big thing on my mind. You know, we've got a baby coming in July, and thinking about leaving for tour, not just leaving my baby and leaving my wife, but leaving my wife to be with the kid without my help. You know, like
Right.
It's all so intertwined. You know, so finding that balance and setting up kind of our life and setting up parameters to where we both know we're getting what we need, while also I'm out hopefully making money on the road, you know.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing, but yeah, I feel like solving those issues and being intimately in the trenches with my wife has really shaped me and my mindset towards my work, you know.
Yeah, I think we all kind of had a varying degrees of shifting our priorities.
Yeah.
And understanding, like, you know what, like, and I feel like that for a lot of people it is, and this is gonna be the simple example, but it's do I have to be like at an office building to do my job, or can a lot of people found out like that can be done at home,
Right?
Or, you know, now maybe that's what they actually needed.
Yeah.
You know, because I know a lot of people were just felt you know, just since they were not getting, I guess they realized they thrive on human interaction.
Yeah,
even
totally.
if it's with strangers.
Totally.
And for me, I was like, yeah, I mean, whatever, take it or leave it. But
yeah, I think
for
there's
some, like, yeah, that's what they needed.
It's interesting. I think there's been an American format for so long, and that was shaken the past couple of years, and it's interesting to see how things land. You know, because they're still landing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see how it all shapes out. But I'm interested to see, you know, my siblings and my siblings' spouses, and my parents and my friends all do different things, you know, none of whom are musicians. And so my mind is also very much in the world of like, what's life going to look like for them? And, you know, I get my sister and brother-in-law have 2 kids and live in Nashville. I've got another sister and brother-in-law who live and are moving to Alabama. And the beautiful thing about my work is that I get to be the uncle, you know, that's there every once in a while, and gets to visit them and come into their world when I'm on the road, and that's a beautiful thing. And both of their families and their work, you know, and how they work, how my brothers-in-law work, especially, it's going to be an interesting part of that equation, you know.
Yeah. I'll try and get you out on this right here.
Yeah.
The self-titled, you worked with Beau Bedford, Texas Gentleman. I feel like, and this is going to be a compliment to both of y'all, but I feel like that honestly does not feel like the Texas Gentleman I've heard previously on previous records.
Yeah. And
I guess like what I'm saying with that is that they would have, like, you know, find what works for your songs.
Yeah.
How was it working with Beau, a guy who's got, you know, a reputation of being able to work with, you know, a diverse cast of artists.
Yeah.
And going forward, you know, this new record, who are you working with?
Yeah, so I'll first talk about Beau. Beau's the man. You know, he's my neighbor and a close friend and a close friend to my family. You know, the reason why he's so good at working with so many people is because he serves the songs really well. Beau's entire spirit is about how can the collective we make something beautiful. It's intoxicating to be around and so fun to be around. You hang out with Beau and it's like I just want to think about art in the way that he does, you know, because he's not just a dreamer. He also works his ass off, you know. So that part of it's really fun. It's always fun being in a creative space with Beau. We've been writing a lot of these songs together over the past couple of years. But he working with the Gents was fun because he knows those guys so intimately. You know, he used to tour with them and be part of the band, and so being in the studio was fun because I got to see them communicate in a way that I've never seen people communicate before. Nick does a guitar part, or we're tracking this live, so we track it live, and he looks at Scott on bass, and he's like, "Scott, great at this one part because you do blah 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 blah." He's like, "Got it." He looks at Nick, and he's like, "Hey Nick, that was a little like more Eric Clapton than it should have been J.J. Cale. Like, can you do the J.J. Cale thing?" And they know the references. They start referencing like different recordings of Grateful Dead songs and different recordings of the same songs in different tones. Their vocab list of music, is so at the tip of their tongue and the forefront of their mind, that they can communicate in a quick and efficient manner.
Right.
It's so wild to see because I'm just sitting there with my guitar, like, okay, like let me just try to play in time and get a good take here. So that's a really fun process to watch and be a part of. I don't know what we're going to do for the new record. I haven't picked a producer. Beau's definitely on the table. There are a bunch of other guys that I've thought about doing it with. And it's fun because all these people that I'm thinking about making a record with, I know I can make a damn good record. They're all people that I really respect and admire. And so I'm hoping that, there are so many versions of this record, but what it boils down to is like finding somebody that cares about these songs as much as I do and really wants to dig in deep and make a front to back a record that really says something and makes people want to keep moving the needle. So I don't know what we'll do, but man, I'm excited about these songs, and it's so fun to get to try them out live and see if people like them and see if they don't,
Absolutely.
So
yeah, it's always about finding the, like that right person who, is just as excited as you and understands, that final version or that final vision.
Yeah.
Or the vision at least.
Yeah.
Because
it's a hard part of it too. Because I say I have a vision for the record, but also it's like I like a lot of different stuff.
Right.
I don't want to make a record that sounds like Leon Redbone because I can't play and sing like that and scat and whistle like that. But I think that stuff is cool. Yeah. So where's the line drawn between how to serve the songs and who I want to be as an artist?
Right.
So finding somebody to help you guide yourself along that journey is important.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the, not to ramble on this part, but like this goes into that whole thing of like, who are you influenced by and like, who do you like?
Yeah.
Where like, on Facebook in the early days, you'd see people just like listing 1,000 artists. And it's like, well, those are all the artists you like. You're maybe influenced by,
right.
A few of those guys, maybe not all of them.
And there are certain things I like about certain artists,
right?
Branding or just like the way they've built a team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm upset. I love Dawes. I that's one of my favorite bands. Or His Gold Messenger is a great example. But I'm not going to make that music,
right?
I can't play guitar like Taylor Goldsmith, and I don't have the same vocabulary or the same perspective that Mike Taylor does of His Gold Messenger. So it's interesting to take those things and to appreciate them and embrace them and distill down what it is that I can learn from them and how to apply it to myself.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Thomas, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah,
I think you're the first Thomas on here. So.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad to be the first.
All right. Well, we'll see you down the road, man.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Thanks. Okay, that is it for this episode. Be sure to check out the songs and records of Thomas Csorba. Go stop on over and visit our presenting partners over at Desert Door, The Blue Light Live, and Charlie Stout Photography. Get yourself a copy of my book, The Lubbock Way, if you haven't just yet. And yeah, we'll see you for another episode of New Slang really soon.